Cesar, the crowd pleaser. If you need to pick me up, ladies, we gon' change your demeanor. Cesar, the crowd pleaser. We gon' do a little dance, we gon' make the naysayers believe us. Hey girl, had a long day, you tired from work. Throw me some dollars and I remove my shirt. You can touch me too, these are the perks. Free yourself, lose your mind and go berserk, and go berserk, and go berserk, and go berserk.
Make way for the bad guy.
What is up, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Crowd Pleaser, the podcast that brings you the inside scoop on what it takes to be a male entertainer in today's age. I'm your host, Cesar, the Crowd Pleaser, and this is episode 68 of the podcast, and today we're going to be talking about love languages. That's right. It's a form of communication that I think has helped me, as well as people I've interacted with and people I've helped life coach into living a better life and interacting with people on a deeper level. So we'll go into it in a minute, but first things first, I want to talk about our Patreon. That's right, patreon.com/crowdpleaser. This is where you are able to kind of support your favorite content creators. You know, before it used to be all kinds of awkward things with PayPal and donations and subscriptions and all this stuff, but Patreon makes it nice and easy, centralized place where, you know, you can kind of help support the shows and the content creators that you enjoy. You know, hosting, recording equipment, hosting on websites and things like that aren't cheap. And so this is a way to give back. There is no commitment. You can pledge for as much or as little as you want and stop anytime. Definitely check it out at patreon.com/crowdpleaser. Of course, every show I'd like to give a shout out to a special patron. And this show's patron is Grace Hubbard. Grace, you rock. Thank you so much for the ongoing support of the show. I really, really appreciate it. It means a lot to me. Thank you for helping us keep the lights on. Next up is La Bear Dallas. This is my home office where you can catch the doors open every Wednesday to Sunday, 7 p.m. to 2 a.m. Fun does not stop as soon as you get there till you leave. That's right. All kinds of birthday shows, bachelorette shows, you name it. You can put your favorite girl or maid of honor up on there and the stage embarrasser. It's a good time. Definitely check it out, guys. Come out. And of course, if you have a special male friend that you think is good looking and wants to try their luck on stage, come out to our amateur night every Thursday night where random rookies can go up on stage and try their luck. See if they got what it takes to be part of the dream team. Then, of course, want to give a shout out to Mandingo Jones. His birthday is coming down this Saturday. That's right, the 26th. Actually, today, by the time you guys hear this. So, yeah, definitely check it out if you're in town. Show Mandingo some love. Great guy, great co-host of the show. So if you guys love his content, he's been working really hard on his birthday act. Definitely want to check it out. So if you're in town, swing by La Bear. Show Mandingo some love. All right, guys, that is it. That's going to do it for our cleanup, or housekeeping, I should say. So with that, let's dive into our main topic, which is the love languages. So there are actually 5 love languages based off of a book by Gary Chapman. This is a book I read a very long time ago that was suggested to me, and I do encourage most people to read it. It is a fairly easy read. I believe the hard copy version is somewhere about 150 pages, and it's a super easy read. Definitely, Gary was attempting to just get the information out there for people as quickly as possible, as efficiently as possible. So it's not very wordy. And yeah, like I said, I breezed through it and I wasn't much of a reader at the time, but I do think it is something that is beneficial to everyone in all aspects of their life as long as they're interacting with other people. Just a small disclaimer is that I do believe Gary Chapman is either a priest or pastor, so there is some religious references and quote notations in the book. So just a disclaimer about that. I personally don't mind it. It's not overbearing or anything like that. He just touches on it. So if that's a thing for you, just something to, kind of keep the heads up. But overall, it was a great read. And what the 5 love languages are is a form of communication for 2 people. And the thing is not specific to a romantic relationship. Like I'm sure he designed it the way he reads for like husband and wife, but they do talk about it. And there's various books that work with friendships, co-workers, and anything in between. And I think children, that's another one. Siblings, all that stuff. I do think the book is quite good. What it means is that there are 5 basic love languages in forms that people communicate subconsciously that really help resonate with someone. Okay. And what the 5 love languages are gifts or gifts giving, quality time, words of affirmation, acts of service, and physical touch. Okay. So a quick rundown about this, and I'll go into each love language in depth in a moment. But what it means is there's a chance, like, for example, let's say there's a husband and wife that have been married for quite some time and they know they love each other, but they kind of feel like there's a little something missing, right? There's no fire, etc. All the things have gone stale, you name it, right? Well, what could be happening is that the husband has one form of a love language while the wife has another. And if they are not aware of this, then they could be attempting to show affection to one another in their own love language. But because it is not their partner's love language, then it's not being accepted to the level that it could, or it's not being as efficient or effective as it could be, right? Effective, I should say. So some of you might have experienced this before in your life where someone is trying to be kind or caring to you in a certain way, and it's just not quite resonating. Like, you kind of feel like, hey, thanks, that's awesome, but you don't really quite feel it. And it's nothing against you, it's nothing against them. It's just the fact that maybe they're not communicating in the correct love language. So that's why I think this is quite important. Once again, there's multiple ways to express each love language, and thus why I feel like it can accommodate every type of interaction, regardless of the level of, I guess, romance or intimacy. So that's why I think it's fine. It works with coworkers, it works with, and I'll explain it as I go into depth with each love language. So I guess hopefully that's enough to understand. If not, you should understand it a little bit more once I go in depth. So let's go ahead and start at the top with gift giving. So gift giving is pretty straightforward. It just literally means to give a gift. Now, I think where most people run into slight problems with this is that they assume that it has to have a monetary value or has to be a literal gift. And the fact, something that you go out and buy and then wrap and then give to someone. And that's not necessarily true. And the book covers this, and that's why I'm going to go over it. But a gift giving is essentially any type of just something that you're giving. A good example of this, for example, is if you make your own card, right? Do like we used to do in elementary school, and you take a piece of paper, you fold it, and then you draw something on the outside, write something on the inside, and boom, there you go. You have a card. That actually can qualify as a gift for someone. Now, don't get me wrong, still giving someone like an actual gift, like a dress or a car or a book or something like that, still will do the trick as well. The basic explanation of this love language is that you are giving something to that person. And like I said, I think people don't have to get wrapped up on the monetary value of it. It is just literally of giving something to the person. And that's how this love language is communicated. And it for example, if we go to any kind of romantic couple, getting someone flowers, right, is still a gift. And so that will be something that will be communicated. This one's pretty straightforward. Like I said, there's not too much to it, but the key point is exactly that. Like I said, where you are simply giving someone something, you can take a little bit of extra time. Like, for example, if someone has a specific macaroons, right? You can do that as well. Go to the bakery store, pick up like a small pack of like 6 or 7 macaroons, and then give that to someone. It costs you less than $10, and yet you're going to completely make their day because A, you are giving them something, and B, you took the time. They can identify that you took the time to get something that is specific to them, and so that could really help change around someone's mood, right? So it's pretty straightforward when it comes to someone that you are romantically involved with. As kids, same thing. Those are pretty simple. You just find a toy, but typically, being a parent, you might have a little more insider knowledge as far as what kind of toys they prefer. So getting them something like that, or maybe like a glove if they're into sports, you get them a new baseball glove. Things like that will really go a long way towards cheering somebody's mood. Once again, you can do something as generic as food. Little things like that will go a long way. Getting someone a pin, it's less about once again, I touch on this again, the monetary value versus the actual act of giving them a gift. So that being said, I will encourage you to just not look in the dark garbage like, hey, this looks kind of new, wipe something off on your shirt, and then ta-da, I got you something. Like, that might be pushing it a little bit. But yeah, gift giving, once again, of course, I do encourage you there. If you guys look up the 5 love languages, I believe, if I remember correctly, there is a test that you can take to answer a bunch of questions that will, at the end, I think it's like something like 15 or 25 questions. At the end of it, it will let you know what your love languages are. Of note, there is any kind of combination of the 5 to include multiples. Like you can have 2 primary languages, you can have a primary or secondary, you can have only one. They all kind of fit in. But I think if everyone takes the time to self-evaluate and kind of really pay attention what really makes a difference and what doesn't, then they're able to kind of become self-aware what their love language is, and that does help. Okay. Once again, like I said, this crosses over things once teammates. For example, you can get them something small like, hey, I got you a jersey. At work, you can get someone like, hey, I saw that you were struggling with your mouse pad. I got you a new mouse pad. Things like that really can help bridge the gap. This also works, once again, if you're going with some kind of business agreement and stuff like that. You can do similar to like the Japanese custom where you give gifts. Even if it is, keep it within reason, but you could be like, if you're doing some kind of business exchange, be like, hey, I heard you like scotch. I got you a bottle of scotch. And that really helps create some rapport with the person and make them feel a little more appreciated than they would outside of that. But that's gift giving. Like you said, we start off with that one because it's probably the most straightforward one. Moving right along, we have quality time. Quality time is exactly what it is, just quality time. And this is something that does involve a conversation, because to different people, quality time is going to be different. Sometimes it could be as simple as 2 people sharing space in the same room. You used to see that a lot with the older like TV shows and movies, where when back in the time where most people were perfectly okay just sitting around not doing anything, like they would actually relax, not be super busybodies like we are nowadays. They would, the husband would be reading the newspaper, the wife would be reading a book. They're both on, one on a chair, one on a sofa, but that's still quality time. So that is perfectly okay. Things like that, people playing board games, all that kind of stuff falls into it. So quality time is just essentially giving your valuable time to someone in a deliberate manner. Okay. And once again, this changes from relationship to style. If it is something like coworkers, it could be a matter of just having a business meeting where you actually do pay attention to them and value their opinion. So they feel like, hey, you are giving me some time that is mine and I value that. And that will create a good level of appreciation. Friends, you guys can hang out at a bar, go to a restaurant. Once again, giving them time where you're not distracted, you're not on your phone, you're not paying attention to something else. That's the difference between quality time and time. Children, pretty straightforward. Once again, doesn't take much. Like, hey, come play with me for a while, or help me do my homework, things like that. Going to the movies, things. And once again, it does involve a conversation, because you have to make sure that it feels like quality time for the other person. You can't just assume. It goes back to that initial example I said, where you might think you're showing appreciation in the way that you find it, primarily in your love language. But if you do not make the conscious effort to speak in that other person, the recipient, then there is a chance that it will not come across correctly. And for those of you that have experienced this or are considering it, you will feel a difference. Like in the book, he calls it, he references a love tank, which is kind of like a fuel tank or energy tank based off of the amount of love you feel. And so you can easily have a family that is caring for you. Like, for example, just to be blunt, let's say you are a quality time person, right? And your whole family, everyone is super busy and they just got a ton of things going on. And for them, let's say theirs is gift giving, right? So they give you gifts. They're like, hey, mom, I got you this. Hey, mom, dad, I got you that, and do stuff. Or like, hey, honey, I got you some flowers, right? And they're showing you that they care about you in their own way, but because they are not giving you the quality time that you desire or speak as a human being, then what ends up happening is, on one side, you understand that they care about you and you accept that, but you still feel like something's missing. Versus they could essentially stop giving you gifts and then maybe, hey, I'll watch TV with you for 30 minutes, or like, hey, would you like to have dinner together? And now all of a sudden, you not only like know that they're appreciative and care about you, but you feel it as well, and it fills up your love tank. So quality time. And like I said, I do think all these things, especially when you're in a more personal relationship, right? Something like a family member or a best friend, or in a romantic relationship, sometimes you need to have a conversation about it. It is a little awkward in more social environments, like, maybe just casual friends or business. It's hard to be like, so what can I do to make you feel appreciated? They might be like, what? Is this like an AA meeting? What's going on? Nothing, not to knock AA or anything like that. I just threw out something. So that is something. But yeah, quality time can be of any type as long as you are giving them the time and attention that they require, and you will immediately see it. The thing is, when you actually speak in someone's love language, whether it is yours or not, they perceive it in a different way, and it makes a world of difference, being significantly more effective than you would otherwise. And so what it does is it kind of helps make both parties feel like something is being accomplished, versus I know some of you or everyone has been in a relationship where someone is trying to make them, or maybe even you is trying to make your significant other feel better, or just improve things, and they're like, it's not working. You're like, well, I'm trying, what else can I do? Well, there's a good chance that you guys are missing or speaking different love languages. So that's quality time. Moving right along, we have words of affirmation. So this one is interesting. Words of affirmation is essentially complimenting and encouraging people verbally, right? And it doesn't want, I say verbally, I mean through words. It doesn't have to necessarily be through words. It could easily be a note written. It could be an email. It could be an award. Just a long story short, it is something saying, giving people kudos for the things they do, right? And this one can be a little trickier because there is a level of being polite, but once again, much like quality time, this has to be meant. It can't just be like someone does something, you're like, oh, thanks, and then you go about your business, because they'll feel like it was not genuine, right? Words of affirmation can easily be overlooked. Because of that, you could just naturally be polite and be like, hey, well, I've been saying things, but the fact is that because that is someone's primary love language, that has a lot more weight than other things, and so they pay a lot more attention to that. Like, for example, for me, I was always raised in that you always say thank you for kindness and services that people showed, whether it's expected or not. So it's just been ingrained in me since I was a child. So I actually, believe it or not, even subconsciously, even when I'm not actively thinking about it, take note when someone thanks me for a lunch or a dinner or not. It's just a thing. I can't explain it. I know they don't mean anything by it. It's not like they're not appreciative of it. It's just not everyone was raised in the way to say it. But it really does. It hits me every single time if I go out to eat with someone and I end up picking up the tab, and it doesn't matter the price. It really doesn't. It doesn't matter if it's like a coffee or if it's like a full-blown meal at an expensive restaurant. It's just one of those things. And so that's the same thing for someone with words of affirmation being their primary love language. So to go down in the specific relationships, things of like, for example, if your spouse ends up making dinner or something like that, you simply being like, hey, thank you so much for making dinner. It was absolutely delicious. That, and taking the time to look them in the eye when you say it, that goes a long way. It makes all their efforts entirely worth it, and they feel completely rejuvenated by that. Another thing is, for example, if someone does well at work and they get promoted, being like, I'm so proud of you getting recognition for your hard work. You are a fantastic worker. Things like that really go a long way and make them feel like they are accomplishing something, and make them feel the love that the fact that you are encouraging them in a positive light. This is as well, same thing for children. Let them know, I'm really proud of you. You did a great job on doing your homework on time, or I'm really proud that you got all your good grades. You're doing fantastic on your baseball team. That game you played was awesome. Things like that go a long way towards someone their primary love language is words of affirmation. Little things like that, you can leave a note. Hey, just want to let you know I'm very proud of you. Hey, I just want to let you know I'm super appreciative of you. Things like that. Sending them an email if they're away, or text message. All those kinds of things. Actually having the words to show that they are doing a good job, or they are encouraged or appreciative. All those kind of things really resonate with people of words of affirmation. So it's very important that you remember to do stuff like that, regardless of whether you think like it might fit this situation or not. It fits for them. And that is the biggest hurdle, is when two people have a different love language. Sometimes it's not the easiest thing to communicate through that, but as long as you are able to identify it, then you are able to make modifications and lead to a healthier relationship, regardless of the level of intimacy of it. Words of affirmation. Yep. And then, of course, like I said, at work, that can go as well with like plaques and rewards. That's a really good example. If you look at that, there's some people that they receive a plaque, and you'll find it in the back of a drawer or maybe even in the garbage. And then there's other people that receive a plaque from work or a sports team or something like that, and it's hanging and framed, and they clean it all the time, and they show it off. Those are good examples of people that speak in words of affirmation and do not, they're extremely appreciative of that support and affirmation of the things that they're accomplishing and doing, whether big or small. And of course, with all things, like I stated, with gift giving, does not have to be a long, huge, drawn out, deliberate thing. It could simply be small acts in between or normal interaction. And you'll be surprised, because once you identify what someone's love language is, and you speak in that form, you'll be a lot more effective. You'll do less to accomplish more. And that's why it's so important that that any relationship identify that. And the more you do it, the more you'll be able to identify things like that and figure out what works. But that's words of affirmation, guys. The fourth love language is acts of service, which pretty much just doing something for someone. And this one can prove to be a little difficult if you're not accustomed to it, but it really can pay off in the long run. You're just doing things for people. I mean, that's pretty much the long and short of it. Honestly, that's the funny thing about most of these love languages, is that once you identify them, it actually ends up being quite easy to accommodate them. And once again, these are both big and small. It is just doing something for someone. And it could be as simple as making them dinner, or running an errand for them, or if you're living with the person, laying their clothes out while they're taking a shower to get ready for work, things like that. All these little things that you can do really go a long way towards making this person feel appreciative or appreciated. And so acts of service is probably the toughest one, just because for some people that aren't used to doing things like that, it might take a little bit of reprogramming or a hard time trying to figure it out. But most of the time, once again, an open line of communication can do a lot towards helping things happen. Typically, the person you're trying to work on or with will be more than happy to accommodate you trying. I mean, why not, right? They're not going to try to set you up for failure. They want to set you up for success. So if you're making the efforts to put in the effort, essentially, then why not? So let's go ahead and break it down like we have been doing. For example, let's say with children, acts of service might be, helping them with a project or something, a school project or something, being able to go grab, and it gets a little bit shaky because of things like quality time and whatnot. But let's say you go to the store and grab the stuff for them, or you might make them dinner. Things like that really go a long way. You do something for them, they feel appreciative. They really do appreciate that. Once again, another one is maybe you get their clothes out for them before they're getting ready for school, things like that. Just doing a service for them. With children, it is a little bit harder because you kind of already do that, essentially, because they are children. But it could be a thing. And then as they get older, college students and things like that, you're still able to accommodate them. I think it's a little bit easier for people that you live with, like spouses and fiancés and girlfriends and things like that, because of the fact that it's a lot easier to run errands for each other. Or essentially, another good one is for example, women like taking baths typically more than gentlemen do. So if you know that your significant other female is having a long day at work, you can essentially run the bath for him and have him ready for when, essentially just get the bath ready for him. And that goes a long way towards them feeling appreciative that you did something for them. If someone's on their feet all day, maybe rubbing their feet could be something get it. It's not a thing for everyone, but just something small like that could work. Obviously, there's bigger things. You can do the groceries. You can wash somebody's car. A big thing is errands for them. These different acts where you're servicing someone, you're doing a service for them, is what really goes a long way. At the office, I feel like it also can be fairly easy if you understand what someone has to do. If someone, for example, has a busy day and they're loaded, you can easily be like, hey, what are one or two of the tasks that you are overloaded with that maybe I can do for you? And that will allow you to build rapport with that person. as well with your bosses. Hey, I went ahead and took the liberty of doing this for you. I know you normally do it, but I had some extra time, so I did it. There you go. Things like that are what acts of service fall into and how you're able to accommodate. Obviously, for your parents, that's a good thing too, especially as they get older. Taking chores and stuff, tasks off their hands, really appreciate. You do see that quite a bit with elderly, where a lot of times they just want you to come over and do something for them. And one, it's because, like it might be quite a bit of a chore for them in their older state, but two, they feel like you're still appreciative and still care enough to do something for them. And that's where acts of service comes through. And yeah, I mean, that's pretty even across the board. That's the one that's a little sometimes easier and sometimes more difficult to accommodate. Definitely, I feel like needs a conversation. But another one that's giving a massage is another one as well. If someone's having a rough day, once again, these are slightly more intimate ones. Maybe not. You could probably do it with close friends as well. But a lot, especially in today's age, a lot of us really neglect the self-help portion of our lives where it is required. And so the fact that you're like, hey, I'm not good at it, but I'll give your shoulder or stick an elbow in your back or whatever for a little while really goes a long way towards helping someone. Another thing, if someone gets injured, right, and you help them bandage it, clean it up, things like that, that's an act of service that people can really appreciate. And you see that quite a bit where a lot of people kind of have a slight connection when you take care of them when they are injured. So that's something to think about. But yeah, that's acts of service. That's probably one of the ones that is easily overlooked, but can easily be accommodating. I feel like I said that a lot. So let's go ahead and move right on to physical touch is our final one. And physical touch is fairly easy to identify. I know for sure if you're not a hugger, if you're a person that likes your personal space, then there is a pretty good chance that you are not a physical touch person, and there is absolutely nothing wrong with that. I could be wrong though. There might be the exception. There might be where you don't want physical touch from anyone, but then the one person you do care about, you want it all the time. So that could be a thing. That is 100% a thing. But a couple of signs of physical touch people are people that, for example, they like to hug, or they if you're at that level, a random touch can make a difference, right? If you see this in people that, for example, in relationships, when someone is cooking and then the other person walks by, if they drag their hand across their back, or they give them a quick hug, or maybe nuzzle them real quick and move on, don't say a word, those are typically people that their primary love language is physical touch. People that always like to hold hands or bump into you or like snuggle, things like that are significations of that. In children, it's pretty easy. They're normally the ones, like, for example, if you're sitting on the sofa watching TV, they're the ones that crawl right up next to you and lean on you as you were watching TV. Things like that. Grandparents or parents, you might see that when they, when you sit down and they're on the sofa, they're like, here, come down, sit down next to me instead of sitting down from across me. Things like that. And in yourself as well, if someone putting a hand on you makes you feel significantly better than saying something to you or giving something to you, then physical touch would be your thing. And so these are the characteristics of someone that their primary love language is physical touch. And so to accommodate this in the workplace, handshakes, that's a good one, right? You can't exactly sit there running around hugging everyone, but giving someone a handshake, or maybe putting your hand on their shoulder when you're talking to them, not in a demeaning manner, or just kind of like giving them their attention, is definitely a thing. So that one's a pretty easy one. And some people are okay with hugging. It just depends, or maybe giving someone a shoulder shrug, like if you're friends, you kind of bump into each other, things like that. That works as well. Hugging is the biggest one. Obviously, as far as when it comes to like a friend or a kosher level, I, for example, hug a handful of my students if they're comfortable with that, and I don't mind it. Some people don't, and I give them their space. Children, super easy. Once again, cuddle them, hold them, throw your arm over them. Same thing works in relationships where, and like I said, it could be something, it could be the extent of cuddling, and it can go all the way down to simply like, playing with someone's hair. That's one. You see that a lot. It's kind of like one of your stereotypical children interactions, right? The dad like tussles the kid's hair. That works. That's physical touch to the child. They're still getting active engagement from the person doing it, and so they feel appreciative and they feel the love. You'll see that a lot of times when people want to at least have their forearms touching if they're sitting down next to each other, or they'll cross arms when you're walking. That's another thing, even amongst friends. You can old school escort where you just fold your arm and they take a hold of it, things like that. Or with your buddies, you throw arms over your shoulders. There are all kinds of different interactions like that where you'll see it, and it really goes a long way. Like I said, even if you're not communicating and you know someone's love language is touch, it doesn't take long. If they're in another room and you feel like you want to give them some appreciation, you can easily just walk into the other room, give them a hug, maybe like just nuzzle them or something, and then walk off, and you'll be surprised at the amount of a difference that makes. People will find comfort in that. Sometimes you don't have to say a word and just hold someone while they let a good cry out, or if they just want to be held. People say that, and sometimes we reference it to a specific way, but there might be a deeper meaning to that as far as where they actually need just the physical touch, not just the part to be held. And yeah, it really goes a long way. You see that a lot of times. What's another one? Like bumping heads. You see that sometimes when people are having a tough spot, you can go forehead to forehead. Little things like that definitely help kind of achieve the cross communication. You'll see it when friends are like, for example, you'll see it sometimes when people are like cooking together. Sometimes you just throw a hip at each other or bump shoulders. That's another way that those little small interactions can really go a long way. That physical touch, that one, like I said, I think it's one of the easier ones to identify because you are either a touchy-feely person or you are not. I mean, there's everything in between, but it is significant to you yourself. You will know the difference where you're like, I just don't like to be touched at all, or like the smallest interactions can really make a world of difference. You see that sometimes in TV shows and movies where like the girl's like, he touched my hand, and like they're totally like blown away. Well, they might have been physical touch. But those are the 5 love languages, guys. Gift giving, quality time, words of affirmation, acts of service, and physical touch. Now, a couple of things I want to close the show with is the fact that, once again, you could have a very easily identifiable primary love language where, 100% I am a quality time person. You could have a mixture of 2 or even 3 where it's like, I like this and this. And you can have one that doesn't do anything at all for you. We're like, no, I don't really care. For example, if people give me gifts, it doesn't matter if it's a car or a ring or a screwdriver, like it doesn't really matter to me. And so I do encourage you to read the book on your own so they go more in depth into it, as well as identifying what your love language is and any people you enjoy interacting with, because it really goes a long way towards improving your quality of relationship, regardless of the level of intimacy that it is. It definitely can help. You'd be surprised how many times it can fix a relationship that you think might be in a tough spot when you identify like, hey, we were just speaking the wrong language to each other, or maybe one way and stuff like that. And then you can make a smaller adjustment like that, and it ends up being significantly easier. Once someone starts to feel loved, then they feel more encouraged and more motivated to return that kind of, reciprocate that kind of effort. So yeah, it can end up fixing a troubled relationship. And once again, regardless of the level of intimacy, it could be a friendship, could be family, it could be romantic, it doesn't matter, it could be work related. And sometimes that makes a really big difference. It can help bridge the gap when you feel like certain relationships are distant for some reason. Sometimes, I just heard a story now where 2 heads of departments bumped heads all the time until finally, like just as a, peace offering, without it being verbally like straight up like, hey, they purchased a cake for them, just like, hey, we had a good quarter, like congratulations. And I guess, gift giving was, or words of affirmation worked for that person. And then after that, like they no longer bumped heads because the other department head wasn't nearly as aggressive as they normally were. So it works across the board. I definitely, once again, the book is called The 5 Love Languages by Gary Chapman. I do encourage everyone to give it a shot and read. You'll be surprised how it will change interactions and how you can see those kind of interactions on a daily basis. But all right, guys, that is going to do it. Once again, 5 love languages. Check it out. So that moves us into our best and worst events of the week. Sadly, I am still not working due to my injury, but I do get an MRI soon, and I mean soon, but not soon enough, in the form of next month. So I'll keep you guys up to date on that. So I don't have necessarily anything for the club, but a less than great event is that I recently started driving my Jeep again, right? And it's starting to get cold, but there's that fine like 1 month period where it's absolutely great to drive around with the top down and enjoy the weather. And sadly, Titan is 20 years old now, and I'm starting to feel it, or he's starting to see it in the form of the fact that things are starting to break down a little bit. So that makes me a little sad because, I mean, I'm not getting rid of him. I'm going to replace things and whatnot. I'll keep it till the day I die. I absolutely love my Jeep, but it's always a bummer when you start to have things break down because, of course, some of the things aren't that expensive to replace. Some things are significantly expensive. So it kind of is a bummer when he gets to that point, but that is okay. On the bright side of things, I did start school, which is awesome. I got lucky enough for the VA to offer me an opportunity to go back to school and go into IT training. So I'm super happy about that. Super excited. As you guys know, I enjoy making content and playing around on the digital platforms. And so, yeah, I get to go back and get all kinds of different IT certifications. And I've been doing school and I've been enjoying it quite a bit. I will admit I've been on the struggle bus quite a bit though, considering I've been out of school for a minute. So I have to fire up my brain again, restart the brain to quickly absorb information and memorize things. But other than that, it's being great. So I'm definitely happy about that. And yeah, let me know in the comments below what your best event of the week is. I would love to hear it and talk to you about it. But that's gonna do it for me, guys. Once again, I'm Jedi, aka Cesar the Crowd Pleaser. Sorry, I've been doing a lot of Twitch streaming, so I've been going by my handle. Anywho, you guys can follow me on social media at Facebook. I am Cesar Collazo, Collazo. And of course, on Instagram and Twitter, I am Cesar LeBear7. So that's it, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. And yeah, until next time, keep bringing the rain.
Airplane mode on tablets and phones. Caesar's crowd pleasers is now on. Caesar, the crowd pleaser. If you need to pick me up, ladies, we gon' change your demeanor. Caesar, the crowd pleaser. We gon' do a little dance, we gon' make the naysayers believe us.